Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Appreciate everybody for coming through. Let's go ahead and get this out of the way. So what we're going to do is we're going to do another mini Econ 101 class. So this is David W. Williams, founder of the highest paid part-time job in the World Options Training Academy. And I want to talk about economic scarcity. And I think that this situation in California, as unfortunate it is, it can provide a really good example of the concept, right, of economic scarcity. And so understanding this concept is going to put you in a position to where you can function a lot more efficiently in economic systems. You understand how things work when you are in a crisis, and not understanding it means that you're going to be at the mercy of other people to provide resources to you and provide services to you when you're in a crisis, right? So it's not about you operating in a state of fear. It's about you understanding how these relationships work, because what we're talking about is relationships at the end of the day, right? And unlike a lot of this relationship stuff that we're doing on YouTube that really doesn't match up to anything in the real world, we're actually talking about how these economic relationships work in the real world, right? And so once you understand that, then you can understand how to form your own relationships based on how economics and economic forces actually work, right? Which is what we call a social science. So really quickly, this show is going to be sponsored by the highest paid online option trading academy. I know I don't promote this every day on my community wall. I definitely don't promote it every day on my Facebook, but I want to still encourage you to look at what we're offering. Look at our track record of success with other people. Look at how we've dedicated ourselves to putting people in the best position to be successful. Also look at our lazy investor course, right? If you just, I'm new to the market. I don't really understand a lot of what's going on. The Lazy Investor course is designed to teach you how to invest without being an expert in the market. It's very, very basic. It's very, very hands-free. It's a basic process. And it's at a price where it's almost a no-brainer to go ahead and make that purchase. It's less than the cost of a tank of gas for most people. Definitely as the year goes on. It's less than you taking somebody out to eat, but the value that you're going to get from it will be greater than you just taking somebody out to eat and you spending that money on the weekend, right? So I want to really encourage you to go into that. Also, though, look at our options trading courses. We have a long track record of helping people be successful in the financial markets. And it's not he say, she say. It's not a feeling. It actually can be showed on a tax return or showed on a balance sheet. And that's something that we've dedicated ourselves to. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in February. But my value to a lot of people's lives can be showed in numbers. It's not, I just felt a certain way. It actually can be showed in numbers. And so that's what I'm here to do. That's my gift. That's my ability. And I'm going to keep operating to that gift until I get a sign or a word that I'm not supposed to do that, right? So I want you to understand something. That's what we're doing with this. So let's go ahead and get back to the content. We're talking about economic scarcity, the value of men during natural disasters, mini Econ 101 class, right? And I was very much inspired to do this because I really believe, and I'm going to continue to hammer this out this year, and it's going to make enemies, and it is what it is. Like I ain't never had enemies before in real life. Right. So I already know what I'm facing. I've been trained and prepared for this. Right. And we're going to continue to hammer the value of men in this particular economic system, because there's a spirit going on across the land where people are thinking that they're for something that they're not for, because we've gotten so to an extreme to where as long as you're not saying that all men need to die, you still think that you're an advocate for men, and really people, they're really not. And it takes situations like this for people to really understand the value of men in a society, especially in the West, because many people have not lived in other places. And even if they do, they're moving as a tourist. They're not moving as a native. And so they really don't understand the day-to-day life of most people in other parts of the world. And so we're going to kind of get into that. And I think this California fire is a great example of what we're talking about. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into it. So we're talking about economic scarcity, right? So what is economic scarcity? It's a demand for goods and services is greater than the supply. So something is scarce when the demand for that is greater than the current supply. So if I'm looking for gasoline and there's only 5 gallons of gasoline and I need 5 and 500 other people also need 5, then gasoline is very, very scarce, right? If there's a particular service and very few people supply it, there's a lot of people demanding it, that service is going to be very scarce. And so when you look at how economics really is based around, economics is really based around the study and the understanding of how scarce resources are going to be allocated. So here's something that a lot of people can't really wrap their head around it. In some situations, there's not going to be enough for it to go around. That's a reality. And we aren't willing to deal with that reality, right? And so because we're not willing to deal with that reality, we can't make decisions around certain things because we can't deal with that reality, right? And we often don't know why decisions have been made to where we get in the short end of the stick because we don't know how to look at the situation appropriately. So we get told a narrative that really doesn't explain what is taking place, but it just gives us something to run with. But often what we're doing in this world is we're fighting for resources, right? This is a world of resource control. It's been like that forever. When we die, it's going to still be the same world. It's a world. So you don't have to do all these great conspiratorial, you don't have to do any of that. Because at the foundation, it is a fight for resources. So you ain't got to create no grand conspiracy. You ain't got to do none of that. Get down to the basics of what it is. There's a certain amount of resources in the world, and people are fighting to control them so they can dictate to other people how they're going to govern themselves so they can get access to those resources. So what we've done in the West is that we've made life a certain way to where people don't even see those fights. Where if you go to other parts of the world, you will see people fighting directly over resources. You actually will see the fight. Okay? So that's what we call economic scarcity. What are scarce and non-scarce resources? Because many people can't differentiate between the two. Okay? So this is why it's interesting to where you'll get people on. So let me give it just an absurd example. I'm a man, right? I have the same body parts that every other man has. I would be an idiot to think those body parts make me scarce. Okay, I want you to understand what I just said. I'm a man, biological. I'm a biological man, right? Or some people call it biological male, right? So I'm a man socially, but I'm a biological male, biologically, right? So I have the exact same body parts that any other biological male has. I would be an idiot to believe my body parts make me scarce. Because why? I got the exact same body parts every other biological man on this planet has. There is no difference, right? So it is folly, it is foolishness for a woman to think her biological parts, because she is a biological female, is in some way scarce. Why? Because those are the same biological parts every other female in the world has. And we got billions of people on the planet. So many people don't understand scarce and non-scarce resources. I'm going to do a video a little bit later, and I'm going to talk about the whole industry around reproduction. And they've created a whole industry around reproduction, which is going to, over time, devalue, right, person-to-person reproduction. Because there's a whole industry to reproduce people the way you don't even need that other person anymore. You can still have a whole nother person, right? And there's a whole marketplace for that. And there's people willing to get involved in that marketplace, right? So a woman's eggs are not going to be as scarce as they were because why? There's women willing to sell their eggs. And they pay good money for eggs. There's women willing to sell access to their uterus. And they pay good money for it. So you can no longer leverage these body parts as having value because why? There's no longer scarce because there's a whole marketplace to provide access to them. And some people don't care if, so like I say, you got two men, right? And they want to have a child. Well, they're not tripping on the woman because they're not in a relationship with a woman. So if a woman is willing to sell access to her eggs and her uterus for those two men, now they got a child. There's a whole marketplace for that now. So the idea to where these body parts have a value, that made sense before you had a marketplace where people in other parts of the world would sell their reproductive organs into a marketplace for money. Your individual reproductive organs no longer have that same value, right? And there's a whole marketplace for that. And I'm going to do a video on that. And that's just the way the world is going. It's called technology. I know several women that are not married, are not in relationships with men that had children using IVF. If I pronounce that properly, if I use the right acronym. I know several women that have done that. That's just the world we live in now. It's called technology. So I think people have this idea to where certain things are scarce and they're really not as scarce as they are, but because they really don't understand economics, they are operating under a falsehood, but they're going to find out real quick what's going on out here, right? So let's keep going. Fresh water scarce. That's a scarce resource, not your body parts, right? Air is not scarce. So air is everywhere. We're just breathing it. It's not scarce. Now, people will claim one day they're going to be able to sell clean air. They may be able to. I don't know. But right now, we know that fresh water is scarce. And the problem is that the majority of fresh water on the planet is frozen. You can't even get access to it. So there's a small amount of actual fresh drinkable water on the planet that people can get access to. And a large amount of that is being controlled by private companies. So fresh water is very, very scarce. Now, in America, we think fresh water is a right. You can go on YouTube and there's women that live in Africa. They live in villages. And they will show you what they got to do to get to a water source. They got to travel, walk, yada, yada, yada. And here's the problem. Everybody's using the same water source. So how fresh is it? But in America, we're offended if we turn on our faucet and the water don't come out because we believe we're paying for a service. But in reality, fresh water is very, very scarce in this world. It's very scarce. Right? So there is no guarantee that America will continue to be able to provide its citizens with fresh water because why? There's large parts of this planet where those countries cannot provide their citizens with fresh water. They don't have the systems to do it. They don't have the infrastructure. They don't have the financial resources, and they don't have the will to do it. Because what happens when the only way we can get fresh water is to take it from somebody else? Right? What happens then? If you were to go back to like the Middle East, what people call Saudi Arabia, way, way back in the day, you had tribes, right, who they had control because they controlled access to oases, which access to waters. And that was their power. So people aligned with them because why? They got access to the water, right? So I want you to understand that we haven't really thought about these type of things because we doing all these grand conspiracy, but it's really going to come down to the basics. Fresh water is a very, very rare thing in the world. The majority of fresh water in the world is frozen. So we have access to the small amount of fresh water in the world that's not frozen, and a large amount of that is privatized where you got to pay for it. Companies like Nestle own fresh water in other parts of the world. So that's why when you go to places like India, you got to buy fresh water, right? You go to Mexico, people tell you never to drink the water. So we know fresh water is scarce because everybody says if you travel to Mexico, don't ever drink the water out of the tap, buy water. So what happens when you can't afford to buy water? You got to drink water out of the tap, right? Well, air is not scarce. We just go around and breathe air. So we have to understand what is a scarce resource and not a scarce resource so we can evaluate things properly, okay? My bad. Scarce resources, which is going to be a supply, right, can demand more resources from consumers to get access to the resource. So here's why money is important. Money is a tool, right? It's a way to facilitate transactions, but in certain situations, it's going to be considered a resource. Why? Because it facilitates transactions. If I have a scarce resource, let's say I have water, and people are dying to get fresh water, I can demand more from consumers to get access to my water. Because why? I got it. And you don't have it. Or you can just drink water that's going to make you get sick. So once we understand economic systems, we understand once something becomes scarce, the supply of it becomes scarce, whether it's going to be a product or a service, they now can demand more from consumers to get access to that said resource. So you got to understand that because that's the game that you're playing. You feel me? That's the game that you're playing. Let's keep going. So this is why this is important. This is why I keep hammering this. And many people have gone through school. They got degrees. They educated, yada, yada, yada. And they don't understand supply and demand. But this is what's really going on around you all the time. I just got done looking at the markets. When you're looking at the chart on the market, that's what you're looking at. The same thing you hear. You're looking at the XY axis. A price equilibrium is where people decide that they're going to buy or sell that stock at. So we're looking at the bid and the ask on the stock, and if somebody agrees on the price, that's price equilibrium. That's all it is. So when you're looking at a chart of a stock, you're looking at the exact same thing. Looking at supply and demand graph, right? They just put a whole bunch of stuff around it to make it look, but that's all you're looking at. It's based on this foundation, right? And so we should really, in my opinion, and I'm an advocate for focusing more on this type of stuff. But again, we've built the world, and this primarily has been built by me, and people are not gonna like me saying that, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it, to where people can ignore this type of stuff and worry about everything else. But eventually this type of stuff becomes important again because of what's going on in the world, right? So we know we had these LA fires. Unfortunately, they're still going on right now today. Hopefully we think they're going to end around this Wednesday, right? Which I believe is tomorrow. Hopefully they can get everything wrapped up by the end of this week, hopefully, right? Massive, massive destruction, massive damage. People are going to play the blame game. They're going to try to figure out, let me explain something to you. A fire of this size, it would have been very, very expensive to have a perpetual preparation for this type of fire because of how big it is. It'd have been very difficult to have perpetual, and I mean have ongoing prep for this type of fire. Just been very difficult because of how large the fire is, how widespread it is. Because here's something that people don't want to talk about. Once those winds kicked up, you can't put planes in the sky because it's too dangerous. So your ability to fight the fire from that particular perspective is now taken off the table, right? So to create a contingency plan for a fire this big would have been very, very expensive to keep that going. You know, and a lot of people's attitude would have been, well, we're paying for something that we're not utilizing. Why don't we take that money and do something else with it? This might be a once in 100-year fire. Okay, so we know we had this fire. Firefighter services are now in high demand, and the demand is now greater than the supply. Okay, so firefighters, a profession that most people will say is not a high status profession. Most people don't want their children to become firefighters. Most people, you know, we just gonna go by what the internet say, don't want to be in a relationship with a firefighter because they're not making six figures, yada, yada, yada. Now those services are in extremely high demand. And now the demand for the services is greater than the supply of people that can provide the service. So what we see now is bears didn't show up to put the fire out because people chose the bear, but the bears ain't show up to put out that fire, right? Bears ain't willing to risk their life to put the fire out, right? None of these other groups have shown up to go out on these streets. And I've seen some of the videos of the people fighting the fire. It looked like something out of a video game. They're not willing to go risk their life out in the middle of these streets and fight these fires while the fight. It looked like something, I wouldn't even want to do that. It looks like really like you're doing something out of a video game. It don't look like real life, right? But now the demand for services is higher, right, than what we currently have. So let me give you an example of what we're talking about, because let's go into some numbers, right? So here's an article from Fox Weather. Okay, we're talking about the firefighters. Abbott sent firefighters. He sent 130 personnel, 45 engines, and ambulance travel to Texas. Right, Texas got on board with it. Okay, Oregon sent 15 teams, and then sent another 6 teams to California. Right, Oregon sent 300 firefighters to Los Angeles to go fight. There go their engines right there. Colorado sent an aircraft to provide aerial information, but they also sent 9 teams, including 50 engines, right? 25-member team from Nevada, including members of Vegas Fire Department, went to California, okay? 220 firefighters from Washington went to Cali. Utah sent 14 local fire stations from Utah went to California. They worked 36 hours so they can go and get their recovery in. Then we do know that the Mexicans also showed up with a team, right? So you're seeing people from all over sending people to come fight. And the majority of those people are going to be men, because why? The majority of firefighters are men. That's just a reality of the situation. So now men who are willing to risk their life to protect somebody else's property. This is not their property. You from Texas, well, going to California got nothing to do with you. That's not your property. That's California issue. You from Texas, you from Utah, you from Oregon, you from Vegas, or really you from Nevada, right? You from Mexico. If property gets destroyed in California, what they got to do with you? So these men are risking their life, right? And they risking, now they getting paid, they're not doing it for free, but they still risking their life. If these men have families and they get hurt, that negatively impacts their family. But they doing that, why? Because we need a bunch of people to help put out this fire. But the bears ain't showing up to put out the fire. So this is what I'm trying to tell you, is that when you don't know how this stuff actually works, and you don't know how this world actually works in real life, not on the internet, not these, these fantastical Disney World stories that people make up, you can never solve real problems. And we're going to talk about that, because you don't know how it actually works. Okay. I cannot jump on the basketball court and put the ball under my arm and run down the court. Not in a real game. Now, I can do that on an internet blog or do that on TikTok and talk about, yeah, yada, yada. But in a real basketball game, I cannot put the ball under my arm and go from one baseline to the other baseline and run down the court. Why? Because you don't play the game that way. You got to dribble the ball. So the problem is that we don't really understand how these things work. So we just make up stuff because it sounds good at the moment, right? So let me go back up. So again, men have created a world where the average person does not have to concern themselves with how the world works. That's part of the industrialization of the West. Part of the industrialization of the West is have everybody specialize in what they do and don't worry about what anybody else does. It worked to industrialize the West. The downside is that it created a world where the average person doesn't understand how the world actually works. They don't know. So they just make up stuff, right? And so people are just moving around the planet and they're moving around America and they don't understand how these things work. When you go inside your house and you cut on the water and the water cut on, how did that happen? It just happens because it happens, right? Or you flip your switch and the lights come on. How does that happen? It just happened because it happened. Or you go outside on the road and the road is paved. You go to places in the world, there's no such thing as no paved road. All the roads are dirt. How you get paved roads outside your house? How did that happen? It just happened because it happened. Right? I go to Hartsfield, massive airport. Well, why is Hartsfield there? It's just there because it's there. They're building a parking garage across from the Delta terminal in Hartsfield. Well, that garage just popped up. It's made with Legos. Like, how did that garage get built? So people don't really understand how this world really works. And we built the world where you don't have to concern yourself, right? But the problem is that you can't solve certain problems because you don't really understand how the world really works. I got a video on YouTube talked about capital expenditure and CapEx and why the men won't build. And many people don't understand CapEx because it's taking CapEx. Delta probably sold a bond to get the money, not Delta. Hartsfield probably sold a bond to get the money to build that new parking garage. That's going to be 7 stories. They probably sold a bond, which means what? They know revenue is going to keep flowing through Hartsfield. That garage is not just getting built because it's getting built. Somebody got to pay for it somewhere, right? So when we don't understand how the world really works, we just make up stuff. And then we aggregate ourselves around other people that also make up stuff, but nobody knows how to solve problems because why? We don't know how this stuff works in the first place, right? We on the basketball court trying to put the ball in our arm and run down the court and wonder why the ref keep blowing the whistle. Let's keep going. So let me go here. How come we're not seeing a surge of women's groups signing up to be firefighters to help the women who be impacted by the fires? So a lot of women have been impacted by this fire. We're not seeing a surge of women's groups to go out there and fight these fires. That ain't happening. I don't know that's not taking place. So we see at the end of the day, when these things have to get solved, who got to show up to solve it? See, because you can't talk your way through this situation. Somebody actually got to go out here into the woods and fight fires. Somebody actually had to go into these neighborhoods and fight these fires. So now the talk is over with. You got to go do. Right? It ain't about talking. Right? So we're not seeing people that advocated that we don't need these people in our life. They haven't built the support systems in the network to go help those women who have been negatively impacted by fires. Right? You got some of these chicks on YouTube now crying over what happened in LA. Y'all need to put the team together and go get busy. Ain't that what y'all do? So that's what you got to understand. When you don't know how this world really works because you've been given so much luxury, you just come up with stuff. Let's keep going. What happens if all the men fighting the fire decide that because they're not high status, they should go put the shovels down and walk away? So if they start to believe what they're being told is that because I fight fires, I looked up in Los Angeles, the median salary for a firefighter is around 80 to 90 something thousand. That sounds like a lot of money, but you're in LA. So comparable in Atlanta, that'd be around $60,000, which is you're not poor in Atlanta at 60,000, but it's not like you balling with Atlanta at 60 grand. So that's not considered a high status profession. So if they buy into what they're being told, I had a dude get on my YouTube and tell me, well, you know, if you don't make a certain amount of money, you don't deserve to be married. Well, I say, well, that means everybody that pick fruit don't deserve to be married. Everybody that pick the vegetables that you eat, they don't deserve to be married because they never gonna make that kind of money. So this idea to where if you're not high status, you don't deserve certain things because you're a nobody because you don't make a certain amount of money. Cool. If they go with that and say, well, you know what, I'm a nobody, so I shouldn't even be out here fighting this fire. I shouldn't even do it because I'm just a nobody. I don't have any value. I'm null and void. I'm not valid. And they all put their shovels down and walk away. Then what happens? LA just keeps burning. LA just burns to the ground. Because you don't have a group of people that are willing to risk their life to help somebody else out. Because again, a lot of these people that's not their house that's burning down. That's not even their neighborhood. And they're not going to get rich doing this either. But they're risking their life to do it. Anything can happen while you're out there. So this is why I try to tell you that a lot of these narratives, and let me tell you something, and I talked about this and I'm going to keep building on it. The death of America is when you have something like what we saw happen in Los Angeles and no men show up. That's going to be the end of America. It's not going to be none of the rest of the stuff that you think. Because you know what will happen? LA will just keep burning and keep burning and keep burning. LA will just burn itself down. That's going to be the death of America. You're going to have something that we seen happen in Los Angeles. And because they so demoralized and defeated men, don't nobody show up. They just sit back and look at it. And LA would just kept burning. And it'll spread through the whole LA County. And next thing you know, won't be no more LA. And then it'll be no men to come rebuild it. It'll just be burnt down. That's what's going to be the death of this country. And that's what we're going to, right? So luckily, they was able to find some people to support this particular effort from other parts of the country. But that's going to be the death of America. You're going to get an emergency like this and ain't no man going to show up to solve it. So if your group don't value the service, what happens when you need the service and can't pay for the service? So you can say, hey, you know what? I don't want the people in my group to be firefighters. Okay, cool. You know what that means? You have to have the financial wherewithal to pay for that service when you need it. So you may say, hey, you know what? We don't want the men in our group to be firefighters. You got some women. I don't want the men in my group to drive trucks. Cool. I don't want the men in my group to do electrical work or plumbing work. Okay, cool. Now you got to have the financial wherewithal in your group to pay for those services. So the billionaire real estate developer that had a private fire team, so his mall wouldn't burn down, he paid for that. That wasn't volunteer. That wasn't for free. That man paid for that. In fact, he paying retainer. So he paying for that service whether he needed it or not. He didn't call them people and they showed up. That man been paying for that service. Just like you got people that pay attorney on retainer. You pay every so often to make sure that attorney stay on deck for what you got going on. Right? You got people that got a CPA on retainer. You pay that CPA every so often to make sure they keep looking at your books and doing work for you. You keep paying them. So if you don't value the service, what happens when you need the service, but you can't pay for it? But you ain't think about that part because you believe the service is going to always be there. But there is an economic relationship that's providing the service. So why would you believe it's going to always be there? Because we've seen in other parts of the world where they have disasters and nobody don't show up in that area. Because why? Who's getting paid to do it? So that's why in Haiti, a bunch of gangsters can take over a whole city. Because why? You ain't got no police department. Because why? Who paying the police? Nobody's paying police in Haiti. So a bunch of gangsters can take over a whole city. They had a situation in Haiti, man. These dudes ran around and killed all the people over a certain age because they said them people was doing voodoo on them. Well, wasn't nobody there to stop it. Because why? Who paying people to be there to stop it? Nobody's being paid to offer to provide that service. So it just takes place. So if you don't value the service in your group, you need to make sure you got some money to pay for the service because one day you're going to need the service. But see, you don't think about that. Then once you need the service, somebody else supposed to provide the service for you. Why should they? You ain't paying for it. So that's what I want you to understand. This is the real world. This ain't the internet world. So let me roll this back real quick. I know somebody that lives in the DMV area. So an example of what I mean. It snows out there. The city will do the roads. The main roads and the main streets, the city will do snow removal. They don't do snow removal in the neighborhoods. So this person lives inside a complex of like houses. They got like their own little complex of houses, like a suburb. They pay an HOA fee. The HOA fee pays for snow removal out of the complex, but you got to pay for it. So there's a group of people when it snows, they come out like 3 o'clock in the morning and they go remove the snow. They de-ice the roads. So people inside that complex can leave and get to the main road. Got to be paid for though. So this person was talking to me and they said, I can see on my budget every year for my HOA what services got paid for because they got different services in that HOA. But this is a paid service right here. Men are not showing up at 2 o'clock in the morning to remove snow out of your neighborhood for free. They got snow in front of their house. Why would they do that for free? If they got to remove, so it don't work that way. You have to pay to get that service. And then when the snow happens, they show up and do it, but it's paid for. So I was talking to a sister on my YouTube, and she was talking about a certain areas of Atlanta. They don't pay to remove the snow out of these particular neighborhood streets. And the people in those particular areas, because they can't pay for it, when it snows, like what we had in Atlanta 2-3 days ago, they just got ice on their street, which is very dangerous. See? Then this person told me that her husband and the guy that lived down the street on their street inside this particular complex, they go and clear all the snow off the sidewalk just on their main street. Right? So end of the day, 2 men still go out here and take the job of clearing the snow off that sidewalk. See what I'm saying? So when you say, well, I don't want my son to do snow removal. Cool. That's cool. Right? I don't want to marry a man that do snow removal. That's cool too. You got a choice. But then at the end of the day, you got to pay somebody to do snow removal because why? Snow removal costs money. They don't do snow removal for free. They're not going to come into your neighborhood and clear the streets and clear the sidewalk for free because they just trying to look out for you. They got to get paid. So if you devalue a particular position in our society, you have to make sure that you have the financial wherewithal to pay for that when you need it. Because when you need it, you need it. And then now you on YouTube begging somebody to come to your area and help you out because you don't have the financial wherewithal. That's why this stuff is important. But people make money distracting you from this type of stuff. Then when you need it, you want to beg for it. Life don't work that way. So again, this is why this is important. Supply and demand, understanding price equilibrium, understanding demand, supply, producers, consumers, quantity demanded at what particular price. That's why this stuff is important, right? And that's going to be the particular end of this particular video. Economic scarcity is real, right? I call it scarcity, but I think the actual way you pronounce the word is scarcity. It is real, right? And if you don't understand this and you don't value it, you're going to put yourself in a situation to where you're going to need something and you're not going to be in a position to pay for it. And you're just going to have to go without. And to believe that this country will always be able to provide the resources that it provides is false. You're going to see more, excuse me, you're going to see more privatization of services inside the United States, right? Because you got a group of guys inside the White House. I'm not talking about Trump. I'm talking about some of the people that's in there with him. And if they have their way, they'll privatize everything. And the way if you can't pay for it, you just won't get it. So you won't have men showing up to put out fires if you can't pay for it. You won't have men showing up to do any kind of filling potholes or redoing sidewalks if you can't pay for it. And the reality is that most of y'all can't pay for it. If you're not in a pool of people, a big pool where your tax money supports these services, and the people that have it help pay for the people that don't have it, and you don't have those type of economic relationships, you ain't gonna be able to have it. And that's the reality of the world we live in, right? So I want you to think about that when you start ingesting some of these narratives around stuff and who's needed and who's important and yada, 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 because that sound good because of the world in which we built, where we can flip on switches and get stuff, right? We got refrigerators. We got AC in the house. We got, plumbing. We don't have to do any of that labor that people had to do 100 years ago just to support themselves. All this has been built. We've built infrastructure to allow all these things to happen, right? But all these things take place because there's money there. And government's providing services. Government built our internet that I'm using right now. It's built by the government. You go to other parts of the world, they don't have anywhere near the internet penetration we got. America got primarily almost 100% internet penetration. When we no longer can support these resources and support these projects and support these programs, people are going to understand, right, the value of these relationships, because nobody's going to show up to help them in their situation, right? And nobody's going to be even compassionate to what they're going on, because they're going to be so busy trying to make sure they got what they got. So I hope you got some value from it. We're going to go ahead and read out the super chats. If you got any questions, yada, 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 we're going to get up on out of here. Side note, I've been looking at, man, I've been short SIG Jewelers for 2 years. It finally sold off today. I need to learn how to short shares, because that'd have been a great play. I've been short that thing for 2 whole years. Tech Homeboy, man, appreciate it for $1.99 super chat. Lock Vegas, appreciate the $4.99 super chat. Future Vision, appreciate the $4.99 super chat. Ray Gun, man, appreciate coming through with the $2, bro, and being a mod. What's up to Jay Preston? What's up to Ant Dog? What's up, GC? What's up, Miss Phoenix? What's up to Dr. Chaz? Yeah, Dr. Chaz, that move on the spot this morning was crazy. That was crazy. They sold that thing off so aggressively. It was crazy. Let's see what the CPI data tomorrow. Let's see what the CPI data do. So if you want to learn how to trade the SPY, especially get that short-term money, you need to reach out to Dr. Chaz. She got the program for you. She got the process for you, and she knows what she's doing. She's the go-to person if you're trying to trade short-term in this market, right? She's the go-to person. That move on the SPY this morning was crazy. I thought the SPY was going up. They sold that thing down so hard, it was crazy. I don't know where it's at now because I've been online. So big up to Dr. Chaz. What's up to Miss Michelle Green? Miss Glamour says we had to import men. America needs to look at that. Most definitely. They need to look at that. So the state didn't even have enough men. They had to bring in men. They had to bring in Mexicans. The people on the graphic, those Mexicans. They had to bring in Mexicans from south of the border. Right? Now the Mexicans can front on America and be like, well, no, y'all trying to push us out of here. Y'all got it. But they ain't gonna do it like that. So Michelle Green says, Mama had 14.5 inches of snow. That's crazy. It took nearly a week for somebody to remove it to stop by her the snow. It took that married couple 20 minutes and made $60. I feel you. Augusta says, people have never seen garbage men go on strike for over 2 weeks. I feel you, bro. L Light says, it go your way after 2 years. I've lost money on the play multiple times because I'm trading with options are really not liquid on that ticker. So I've lost money on it because this is the thing, L Light, the diamond market is over because of synthetic diamonds. The natural diamond market is over, and you just can't because of how cheap or how inexpensive synthetic diamonds are, what we call lab diamonds. The margins are not there for the retailers anymore. So they have to re-rate their business now. But I've been SIG, I was shorted. They had a decent year, and then now they got it down. I think SIG is a $30 share stock. The issue is the options are very illiquid. So it's hard to play with options because I had cut a $30 January 2026 put yesterday before this news came out. I had cut it without a loss. Because I was like, man, this thing ain't gonna move. I cut it. Today it came out. I'm telling you, bro, I'll be early on a lot of stuff. I gotta learn how to short equity. Because I'll be early on a lot of stuff, bro. Like early. I'll be early by like 6 months to a year sometime. But I know what I'll be looking at. Your Bears got wrecked yesterday, had a cup. I feel you, Dr. Chaz. Yeah, they sold that thing off strong. I thought it was moving up. They sold that thing off so strong, and everything sold off with it. It wasn't just the overall market. They sold off everything with it. So let's see how I go when they drop the CPI tomorrow. Probably got green card citizenship. No, I just think they just getting paid to do it, bro. You know what I'm saying? Cali is paying a lot of different departments to come help them out, because if they don't, the fire is just gonna keep burning. Like if they don't put these fires out, LA is gonna burn down to the ground. So Cali just has to spend the money to pay to get these fires put out. So I think they just paying them. I don't think they get no green card. I just think they're getting paid to do it. It's a service because these services now are very much in demand. So the market now is looking for people that can offer these services because, again, if they don't stop these fires, LA will burn to the ground. No doubt about that. I bet them private fire was really checking chicken. Yeah, he was paying big money for it. But GC has saved his property. So he got a Class A commercial property. So his attitude is, I'm going to pay for it just to keep it protected because it's Class A. So the man trying to protect his investment. And he got the money to do that. Miss Phoenix 91 says, transportation industry from truck drivers to bus drivers were made with majority of men. You do not want a country where transportation is limited. Most definitely, Miss Phoenix 91. You know, the reason why I can order something from Amazon that comes in through the Inland Empire and it can be on the East Coast of this country in a week is because somebody's going to get in a truck, which is 90% chance is going to be a man, and they're going to drive it across the country. Now, we do got women truckers. Big up to our women truckers. But the majority of that industry is men. And it's the fact that people will drive and do that type of work is the reason why we have it. And everybody that's doing that type of work don't own the company. You know, this idea to where, you know, you doing transportation, but you got to own it. It's crazy. It's crazy. But, you know, people wild on this internet. When natural disasters happen, all the silly talk stops. I feel you. The fires are moved to Ventura County. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, Miss Northern World, we gonna be optimistic about it because they got a lot of people on deck fighting it. And hopefully these winds slow down after Wednesday and they can really get in there and do what they got to do. But this is a once in a 100-year fire. So I just think people's attitude to where there should have been a contingency plan for it. It would have cost some money to keep all those assets on deck. People wouldn't have wanted to pay for it because people don't want to pay taxes for stuff. They just want the resources, but they don't want to pay taxes for it. That's how crazy people are these days. They don't want to pay taxes for stuff. So, Ms. Sherry, I did not get into the prisoners because I didn't really have data on that, but I did talk about how they did a lot of interagency support from other agencies coming in from different states, but also coming in from Mexico. But I didn't talk about the prisons, but I knew about their program because there was a guy named Coolio who used to be a rapper. He passed away. He was in that particular program to have prisoners fight fires. And that was maybe 30 years ago now. So rest in peace to Coolio. Educated Disciple, appreciate the $5 super chat. Brad from Malibu, if you're really from Malibu, I'm surprised your channel isn't banned. It's not banned, but it's not going to get the push. But, you know, we got some ways to try to get around that. But it's really the, when you take certain mantles, you going against the grain. That's just how this game works. So you just got to be built for what come with it. And I'm built for what come with it. Right? So I have been shaped before I ever decided to do this to where I can deal with certain stuff. Because if you take certain mantles, that's just how this game gonna work. Because the world really work where people know what's really going on, but they get compensated to say something different. Right? That's how this game really works. People know what I'm talking about. I'm not like this genius person that just figured this out. People know a lot of this stuff, but they get compensated to do something different. Right? That's just how the world works. It's a lot of gatekeeping in this game of information and the knowledge. But they know better. That's why when Elon was talking to a firefighter, he didn't try to push the narrative that, oh, well, it was a water shortage. Because the firefighter told him based on the size of the fire that we were fighting, there was no amount of water that we could have had on hand that would have fought that fire. So Elon couldn't say that in front of that firefighter because the firefighter knows the space better than Elon because he actually does this for a living. But Elon's used to being around people that just kissing his butt all the time because of how much money he got, but that firefighter wasn't going to do that. So that's just the world we live in. A lot of people know better, but they get compensated to give a different message. That's just how this thing works. So we're going to get up on out here. Like I say, this is a lunchtime conversation. Didn't want to keep you out here too long. Appreciate everybody that came through. Want to just encourage everybody to be safe. And everybody that's being impacted by the fires, I want to just really encourage you to be safe and to put your safety first, because you can always go get you another house It's not worth your life. I know people put their whole, I get it. I understand where you're coming from. But this stuff ain't worth your life. You got one life, right? So if anything happened and you trying to weigh out between my safety and my property, always pick your safety. And you know, you can always get back right. I don't care how old you is, something will always show up for you. But don't never make a decision between property and things over your life. It ain't worth it. They make this stuff in factories. It ain't worth your life. So we're going to get up on out of here. Big up to everybody on the West Coast, man. Y'all going to get back right. And we'll talk to y'all later.